Did you know? In a French rendition of the Arthurian legend, King Arthur fought the Cathpelug, or as we know it, foe, and lost. This was either by being overpowered or tripping into a marsh and drowning. The Cathpelug then took his form and ruled over England, and no one was the wiser. Nero had a dining hall that was able to rotate, supposedly had an ivory roof, and he would indulge in massive orgies there surrounded by his admirers. In the most popular depiction of Siegfried, his sword is not actually Balmung, but is instead known as Nothung, and in other sources is called Gram, which is Sigurd's sword. Caesar was the first documented person to have an autopsy performed on them. Despite the razzing the FGO community gives him, it is believed that Giles was actually a scapegoat and did not actually commit any of the child murders that he was blamed for. Daon lived more of their life as a woman than as a man, and when their body was examined, they were found to have fully formed female breasts as well as male genitalia. Attila the Hun died on his wedding night, and no one knows exactly how. He choked to death on his own blood, but the cause of this was never identified. Okito was one of the most lethal members of the Shinsengumi's most famous raid, the Ikedai incident, but passed out partway through because of what was believed to be his tuberculosis, which was the very first signs of it ever showing up. Fergus lost his kingship because he was too polite. In Mordred's original appearance in the Welsh text, he may not have been King Arthur's enemy, and instead that notion may have come about by fusing Mordred with a different child of Arthur's named Amar. Shiki is the best chef in the entire Nasu-verse, that is, if she chooses to cook. This may be obvious, but part of the reason why Rama appears with Banana so often in Fate is because he raised an army of monkeys to fight the demon Ravana who stole his wife. Lancelot was not originally a part of the Arthurian legend. It was added by Crescent de Troyes to focus even further on his ideology of courtly love. That said, it is believed that he may have appeared as an Irishman based on the sun god Lu. It was Gawain's lust for vengeance against Lancelot that gave Mordred the space to start his rebellion. Also, he kissed a friendly king several times while he was cucking him. The majority of Bedivere's legends are all focused on him killing or assisting in the killing of giants. Musashi was a key strategist in the Shimabara Rebellion, which you may remember as the Christian revolt that Amakusa had a head in. During this, the famed Musashi was knocked off his horse after a peasant chucked a rock at him. Oni often serve as a folkloric equivalent to bandits, and Suzuka herself is described as being a thief. So, it is incredibly likely that her origins lie in a shogun falling in love with a female combatant during a bandit routing at Mount Suzuka. Mary Shelley, the author of Frankenstein, kept her husband's heart in a jar with her everywhere that she went. Despite his prowess and mastery with swordsmanship, Yagi was only known to have killed 7 people in his lifetime, and all for the exact same reason. That is, raising a sword against the Tokugawa shogun. While Sigurd is most famous for his sword Gram, he was also in possession of a cloak of invisibility, which he used on multiple occasions to outwit opponents and even to overpower Brynhild at one point. So I'm actually going to do a correction from a previous video where I said that there is a river in Ireland that was supposedly created by Maeve's urine. It was actually from her menstruation. As of right now, I have found references to it in texts, but I can't find a definitive location for which the river is, because I believe it has since been renamed. Though, there is a township called Maeve's Vulva, so maybe I'm not looking hard enough. Diarmid received the curse to be killed by a boar because his father was a jealous prick. Lan Ling once defeated an army of 100,000 people with only 500 men in his army and was able to do so just by taking off his mask. Beni Enma's name means the Crimson Devil, hence why she appears bright red in her art. Lakshmi Bai only took that name after her marriage and before then was called Manikarnika Tambai, or Manu for short. Faith's portrayal of Jason being an awful bastard is 100% accurate to his historical portrayal. It is a very rare occasion in Jason's myth where he is the leading man to solve any problem, making the fact that he barely even attacks in the game just more accurate. It is believed that Hokusai Oi got her name because it was faster and easier for Hokusai the artist to say Oi instead of just use a real name. I feel like I always end up talking about Astolfo and his store friend's competitive infidelity competition, so instead, did you know that he once chopped off the head of a thief named Orillo, who had been enchanted to heal any wound that he received and reattach severed limbs? After being unsuccessful in killing him, Astolfo just lopped off the man's head and rode away with it. He would later scalp it to get the man to shut up, and he died. The Dioscuri once lost an entire herd of stolen cows because they were slow eaters. Saito Hajime died while sitting in the Saiza position, which is something I would not wish on my worst enemy. Suna lost the arm of Ibaraki after she appeared to him in the form of an old woman. Ibuki, and by extension Shuten, were originally humans that became corrupted. The blade of a Muramasa sword could cut the leaf of a maple tree as it floated by in a stream. The Barghast is still sighted in England to this day. The Trunk sisters are seen as a national symbol in Vietnam and have a holiday dedicated to them every February. Charlemagne is just as influential on the foundation of Europe as the Roman Empire was. It is very likely the reason why Roland was written to go insane for 3 months was a writing tool to give attention to other characters. The fact that he would not wear clothes was likely just because he was French. Yamanami Keisuke also went by the name of Sanen, and for the majority of the Meiji period, there was an expression in Kyoto that was to be as kind as Sanen. Originally, Shiro Emiya and Saber were supposed to have their genders swapped. This was until Nasu stepped in and requested that gender roles be the way that we know them now. Gilgamesh and Sudari would have been ritualistic lovers because the king of Uruk would consummate a ritual by having sex with the high priest of the Temple of Ishtar. The real Robin Hood supposedly died to the old-time medicinal practice of bloodletting, and before his death supposedly shot an arrow and requested to be buried wherever it landed. The reason why Atalanta appears with cat-like features is because she ended up renouncing her blessings of Artemis to have sex with a man. In retaliation, both she and her lover were turned into lions because it was believed that lions could not have sex with each other. It's kind of hard to find a historical fact about Uriel because she is a footnote among footnotes. However, what made her unique from her sisters is that she was supposedly able to scream so loud that it could turn stones into sand. There is a song called Meteor Shower of Life by the artist Stella. Despite being a virgin, Artemis was designated as a mother goddess. This is likely in large part to her connection to the moon, and the moon being seen as a feminine figure, while the sun was a masculine one. Both are unthinking balls comprised of various materials floating in space. David once paid Saul to marry his daughter with 100 Philistine foreskins. Oda Nobunaga was a huge fan of sumo wrestling, and despite his stature being far from that of a traditional wrestler, he excelled at the sport. Nikola Tesla once married a pigeon, and when it dramatically died in front of him, he declared that his life was worthless. Arjuna is able to control the wind to guide his arrows whenever he desires. Billy the Kid was near impossible to keep in prison because he would escape by shimmying up the chimney more often than not. On top of being known for his singing, Sir Tristan was also said to be the best falconer among the Knights of the Round Table. The real Tuara Toda committed tax evasion, hence why he has protection from arrows. Both Anne and Mary survived execution because they claimed they were pregnant at the time of their captures. Anne managed to escape, but Mary ended up dying of illness. There are more dojins of Kuro than there are of Boudica. Ishtar is the god preventing a second mass flood from wiping out humanity. She is also nearly identical to a goddess named Inanna, with very few differentiating factors, making her a prime candidate for being a pretender class alternate in the future. Moriarty was created with the sole purpose of killing off Sherlock Holmes so Sir Arthur Conan Doyle could write something else. Tomoe once ripped off an enemy general's head with her bare hands and presented it to her husband. Nasu considers Fujino's angsty demeanor to be her moe charm point. Much of Chiron's original artistic depictions give him human legs at the front, while the hind legs are those of a horse. This was likely done to show that he was a more civilized centaur. Napoleon once lost a battle to rabbits. I will do another Joan of Arc when we get to her ruler form. Joan of Arc was prophesied to save France by Merlin himself, who declared that a woman carrying a banner would be the savior of the country. Also, more people get upset with the way how you pronounce her name more than any other character, and no matter how you say it, you're actually wrong because it's in French. William Tell, after being arrested, was set free to steer the boat carrying him to prison, but instead of going that way, he ran the boat aground in a rocky area and escaped. There is currently a chapel at the location where this supposedly happened. We all know that Ash was cursed by Krishna with what is believed to be leprosy, but he also had a jewel removed from his forehead that will eternally flow rancid blood until the end of the Kali Yuga. Paris enjoyed watching bullfights, and he would pit his champion bull against others until he offered a prize of a golden crown to any bull that could defeat his. The god of war Ares took this personally and turned into a bull and won. Paris happily gave him the golden crown, and this act of unbridled honesty is what would eventually set off the Trojan War. It is believed that Osakabe Hime still visits the ruler of Himeji Castle every year. Jane chased the man who killed Wild Bill Heacock through the town of Deadwood with a meat cleaver and was only stopped when others intervened. She would have dismembered him for all to see if she had caught him. Nightingale has a descendant who is aware of her portrayal in Fate. Orion gets his name because he was literally born of god piss. We don't actually know Sei's real name. Sei Shonagon was a name given to her when she took up her occupation in the court. I'll do another one for Ilya as well in the future. Ilya has corrupted the last name Einsburn to the point that it is unresearchable. Still on the topic of names, Oda Nobukatsu is actually known as Oda Nobuyuki, but fate chose Oda Nobukatsu instead for some reason. This makes the scenarios with him even weirder because Nobunaga had a son named Nobukatsu as well, so fate's Nobukatsu may have both a syscon and a momcon tag on him, depending on how you want to process that. Bao should have goat legs and hooves, and her obsession with shoes likely stems from this. Zenobia technically had full claim of her territory by Roman law, but the Romans chose to ignore it and attempted to take it from her, causing her to retaliate. Thus, her only crime was defending herself and her people, further showing that the Romans at the time were just bastards. Tametomo once sunk an entire Taira ship with one arrow piercing its hull. On his way to war, Ku saw a fairy washing his bloody clothes and knew that he would die that day. After he was mortally wounded in the battle, he dragged himself to a stone and tied himself to it so that he could die standing up, which is what I plan to do and why I carry 30 feet of parachute cord with me everywhere I go. Supposedly, Elizabeth Bathory had her first child at the age of 12. In the same vein as Ku, Benkei supposedly died standing up riddled with arrows, which is what his final ascension art in FGO is showing. Leonidas throwing Persians into a well was not just a cinematic invention, but a real-life act that he performed. Romulus killed his brother for the most relatable reason possible. disputes about construction. Paris was not Hector's favorite brother. That title went to Deiphobus. Scott Hawk's Land of Shadows can still be visited in Scotland to this day. There is a location where the ruins of a castle stands that are believed to be the Land of Shadows. Karna is the most powerful person in terms of man-to-man fighting in the entire Mahabharata, and was only defeated because he was seriously handicapped. When Fionn was an old man, he attempted to steal the bride of Diarmid simply because he felt that he deserved it more than him. Brynhild's relationship with Sigurd takes a much darker turn when you find out that she was actually married to a man named Gunnar. During his early years, it is said that Li Xuan was so accurate with a spear that he could pierce the eye of a coin during the day and the burning head of an instant stick at night in a single strike. Since her release from the Killing Stone earlier this year, there have been fox sightings at the locations of major events, including the recent resignation of Liz Truss. Kiyohime died because she was not a water serpent. Vlad Tepes held a better defensive and offensive against Meheb II than Constantine and all of Constantinople, showing who held God's favor at that point in history and why he has the protection of the faith. Enkidu technically deserved the death given to him because his insult of hitting the goddess of war with her own bull's leg was something not even Gilgamesh had dared to do. Medusa was never an immortal. As of writing this, we don't have a definitive confirmation on which jaguar deity is possessing Taiga. To all of those of you who like to comment that it's Nagwal, we don't actually have any confirmation on that, it's only theorized. Raiku's sword, the supposedly beheaded Shuten Doji, is in a museum in Tokyo. Despite being a mother goddess, Parvati only gave birth directly to one of her 2 children. Despite popular belief, Hosoin did not actually duel with Musashi. When Musashi visited his monastery to perform the duel with one of the monks, Hosoin was only 16 and not permitted to engage. Nezo was born from a ball of flesh that was inside his mother, and freed when his father attacked the ball believing it to be a demon. Erish was always extremely horny. Valkyries seems to be both an occupation as well as a race, because while most were created by Odin, one is at least directly descended from Thor. Liang Yu was one of the most successful generals in Chinese history, and her economic planning is known to have saved at minimum 100,000 people during her lifetime. There is a small likelihood that one of you listening is a descendant of the House of Este, which was founded by Bradamante and Ruggiero. I'm going to recycle content by saying that Kagetora was killed on the toilet by getting the world's most painful but effective bidet treatment. Gareth was one of only 2 knights to ever be able to successfully hold his own against Lancelot, but was only able to do so by not knowing that it was him. Wada Arco, the artist for Meltrellis, is on record saying that her greatest desire was to draw Melt's ass. It is possible that Canis never actually died, according to one version of her legend, where they became a massive bird, which is what is represented in their NP animation. Eris's existence is what gives weebs and doujin writers hope for master-servant relations in the Fae canon. Fritra was defeated by a generous man donating his bones to form a sword, and yes, I get the joke there. Melusine should actually appear more like a mermaid or a lamia than a dragon, according to the older myths. Percival has the largest bust size of the Round Table. Percival was the original knight to succeed in the Grail quest, but was likely replaced by Galahad due to the popularity of his piece-of-shit father. The tale of Rioma traveling up a mountain and freeing a dragon is true and exists in the historical record. Marianning was almost killed by a lightning bolt at a young age, and this appears in her skill and attack animations. Don Quixote as a story was first thought up while Miguel de Cervantes was in a prison, which explains a lot. The Legend of Britomart was entirely inspired and near identical to the story of Bradamante. This helps to explain why their kits are also nearly identical. You may have noticed some absences, but I assure you that they will be covered with their other versions in the future. Do the YouTube stuff and let me know your fun facts down below. Check my links, keep your chin up, peace.